Welcome to the Shamanism Summit, an extraordinary gathering of teachers and healers from around the planet, sharing insights, stories, principles, and sacred ritual for personal and collective healing and transformation. Please share this event with your friends and family, and come join us on Facebook at The Shift Network. And now your host, Heather Ash Amara.
Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad that you're joining us. I'm really happy to introduce our special guest today, my dear friend, Don Jose Ruiz. And I'm going to read his bio. Don Jose is the international best-selling author of The Fifth Agreement. As a Toltec master of transformation and modern-day shaman, he has dedicated his life to sharing the wisdom of the ancient Toltecs through his books, lectures, and journeys to sacred sites around the world, or journeys with him in his living room. So welcome, Don Jose. So happy that you are here with us today.
Me happy so much, sister, to be here with you and everybody tonight.
Beautiful. So Jose and I have known each other for many, many years, which is why it's kind of funny to read his bio. We both studied with his father, Don Miguel Ruiz Sr., and in a way we've grown up together. So it's just such a joy to have you here. And I'd love you, Jose, for people that don't know who you are or your background, to share a little bit about how did you come to bring forward the teachings of your family. And I'd love you to share just your story of what we all go through, I think, resistance and then deciding to step forward.
Oh, it's been a magical ride. It's a magical transformation. And to see the life from this point on and to see it from where it began, I remember when I was like 9 or 10 years old, I used to be with my grandmother and father in the Temple of Nueva Vida in Logan when they used to teach the tradition when I was growing up. And I remember grandmother saying to me, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said, "I want to be a healer just like you, Grandma." And she laughed and she said, "Where do you want to do it?" And I said, "I want to do it in Japan so no one understands what I'm saying. I just want to have the faith of just pouring it out." So in that moment, they found it was very cute, this little kid saying it. But back then, I see my intent that I did. I made an intent that I wanted to, to be a healer, like the family tradition. And in that moment, it made sense why I went through all the resistance in life, all the interaction that, that made me stop myself, that I hurt myself with. So I grew up with this family, that amazing healers, amazing love, but I got tempted by suffering, especially when I had good friends, who had a bad growing up, and then start hanging with them, and then seeing how the older kids live, and they just party all the time, and a little kid just wants to grow up fast and doesn't want to have nothing to do with this tradition, like many people resist going to church on Sundays, and I was the same thing with the tradition. But little by little, I got introduced to the dream of suffering, dream of hell. And that's when I lost myself completely. But in losing myself completely is when all my family's teaching came up to the plate. And I began not being aware back then that I was in the underworld, in the world of the darkness, because that's where we all shamans and curanderas, the powerful tradition leaders start their process training in the underworld, in their darkness, in their underworld, in the dream of suffering, so they can find themselves. So I found myself in the world of suffering inside of it. Like I was unhappy, depressed, suicide thoughts. And then I remember speaking to a wise shaman from the Amazon, and he said, "What is your culture? What is your tradition?" I explained the Toltec, and he said, "Where in nature did you learn your awareness?" And he said, "The jungle, the forest, the ocean, and the desert." I said, "The jungle, but the concrete jungle." And that's when I had the realization, when we get into this life, we have an intent to share love, but we don't even know it, but that's our natural being. So in my tradition, my great-grandfather was an undertaker. His son was a musician, military person with a musician. My grandmother was a faith healer. My father was a medical doctor, and I was a junkie. And in the world of junkie, of these people who don't love themselves, who use numbness to suppress themselves, their emotion, because this world is a cruel world, and we begin wanting to escape this reality of the pain. So it's sad that as humanity we get substance to run away from reality because we don't want to see. But that was my upbringing. So when I begin seeing that I was hurting my body, is a time when I really step into the Toltec tradition. And in the Toltec tradition, the world of the artist, the world, the tradition of art, is, I found in my life that I didn't have no inspiration because I took it all away. And it was time to unlearn what takes my inspiration away so I can put my attention what brings me inspiration. And that's why, we all have our individual ways of doing things, of healing ourselves. Yes, we may get inspired by other people and seeing other people's path. When we walk our own path is when we find the freedom. We can only go all the way for personal freedom in our own way because no one knows what's stopping us, how we're paralyzing ourselves. But we do know what can overcome all this negativity, and it's our love. So I was grateful that I made that intent when I was just a kid, just a baby, putting my hands on my grandmother's clients and patients, doing the healing work. But now I knew, to be a healer, you have to heal yourself. And this is where I come from. All the healers, the first training is to heal themselves out of constantly because it doesn't stop. And the moment that you constantly doing this act of power is your tradition. So this is where I come from.
Beautiful. And when you were studying with your grandma and with your father and learning, because you grew up learning the traditions, and what I've really respected about you, Jose, is this place of constantly going back to find your own wisdom. And yet you also deeply respect the elders and the lineage. So I'd just love you to share about that balance of listening to the elders, taking in their wisdom, as you also have transformed the teachings to work for you and really to work for modern times.
Yes, I noticed that when I started hiding behind the teachings, when I got comfortable in the teachings and didn't want to apply it in my life. I could wear a mask, repeat the teachings, but I wasn't really applying them. And the moment that I begin saying, okay, I respect my elders because they tackled themselves. It's not that they repeated what their teacher said. No, modern times change. In modern times that we live right now, the parasite got smarter because the old way didn't work because the parasite got smaller because someone who lived that way corrupted it. So I noticed myself when someone asked me, tell me the secret of the Toltecs of hundreds of years ago. I said, I do not know because I was born in 1978. But in that answer, I can see my blind faith that I had for certain situations, certain teachings. And then I began having respect for my elders because our elders just light up their flame so we can pass it forward and keep going forward. It's not about going backwards. I've never seen somebody, the Asian tradition, the runners, they never run backwards. They only get the message and go forward. And when I began noticing that I was going backwards and it's respecting the teachings, respecting myself, and it's respecting the elders, I said, I don't want to do this. It's time to get comfortable in the uncomfortableness. So the first thing that I begin seeing is how the people judge and how people are ashamed of what they're being judged with. So I see my peers, people that I respect, begin judging me, talking about gossip about me, that I was drug addict and these things and I will never change. Miguel left a big problem, even seeing how they were using my dad's teachings, they learned to corrupt them for their own growth, to putting attention to my own self. And, I felt kind of bad, but I was using that because in that moment I said, you know what? Yes, I may be a junkie, but if I accept that, I will not get the reaction of anybody else. Just I live this way, I live that way. I don't have to pretend anymore. And I tell you, sister, when I didn't have to pretend anymore and I can just be me, I really begin seeing people who really value you in life, people who just accept you in life. And you can begin seeing also the people who begin manipulating. Because I remember when I was young, someone that I respected so much, they asked me kind of mockery, kind of sarcastically, so said to me, so how does it feel to be a Nagual, when my father named me a Nagual? And I said, it's like a curse. And they started laughing, ha, 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 why you say it's like a curse? It's because you begin seeing people that you love and respect manipulate you and try to break your wings. And you don't have any ill feelings to go towards them, to hurt them. But you begin seeing how we pass the negativity to each other, to put down to each other. And the only way we can really grow is whatever experience that we are in, because every experience that we have experienced that are in is what we're going to heal. Many people look and create experiences to heal when they don't even have it. So in one point in my life, I knew that my journey was to take care of Jose. Jose was the son of my dad, the son of my mother, the grandchild, but I didn't pick my name. I didn't pick to be born like we were taught by father. we were just born. So I became feeling that I got resurrected and that the other Jose died. The old self died. And it's when I resurrected from the dead. And I love this internet picture of two people walking away from each other. And when they walk away from each other, they have their backs toward each other. They're looking for opposite direction. And the quote says, just because you're walking away from somebody doesn't mean you don't love them. It just means that part of their chapter is over in your life. So for the longest time, I used to think that was somebody else. But, today I look at that metaphor. And the person that I'm walking away from is the old Jose. The old Jose that is dead. And sometimes when I try to be that old Jose, it's like waking up in ghost town in a place that is dead. And I begin noticing that I wasn't growing because I was giving away my power to the people that I respected and loved. And they told me that I couldn't change. And in that moment, I corrupted love, being the perfect secondary character for them instead of being my own main character in my life. And it was until I begin respecting myself after so many heartbreaks that I begin now noticing the shaman tradition. And the shaman tradition is to learn from nature, not the nature outside, the nature within, where everything matters. Because like my favorite singer said, outside I cannot take care of anybody. Who I can take care of everybody is from inside, because inside is I take care of me. So I cannot take anything personally when I see it from the outside. So I can be just like a medical doctor and do a diagnostic without being personal or have any agenda in it. And this is the beautiful thing I'm saying. When you become to this place of feeling, you have no agenda in the world. You just want to live and enjoy your life. That's why our teachings are for everybody. There's people who, like right now, live in racism and discrimination. And can you imagine being programmed that way? Even when you're a little kid, you want to play with this other race kid and someone tells you can't. And the uncomfortableness you grow up with that. I tell you, racist, all discrimination people also suffer, and they one day will have an epiphany of their life, and we're going to be here waiting for them. So we don't choose sides, because we all know that it's just a participation of the addiction of suffering. So when a shaman begins being pure in their own tradition, it will not look for conveniency to live like the old way it was before. When the king and the queen used to live in the temples and they gather, Rasputin, or they gather Moises, or they gather, Merlin, not Moises, they gather Merlin, or they gather other people who represented the mystical tradition. And that's when it got corrupted, because religion, mystical spirituality has no place in politics, because that's a human machismo made up world to govern each other. And of course, we have to have rules, but those rules are based on respect. So now if we take respect to our tradition and respect ourselves, we can totally know that we are the healers in this world and we're prepared. So I love one teaching you teach me, sister, is about being invisible. And the teaching really works because it's like being the chef in a magical kitchen. You're cooking meals and no one even sees you, but you're always grateful to see where you can help. And that's the path that we are on.
Mm. Okay, I have so many questions. I'm going to start with this one. Can you explain for people what the parasite is and how you also experience the parasite individually, but also collectively? Because I think at this time, we're seeing the parasite both in individuals and collectively as well. So how do we navigate the parasite with love?
Yes, to be aware the parasite is ourselves, and it's just the creation of a wounded mind. A wounded mind that got fed by egos and validation to the ego. And it all starts from the beginning, and people didn't realize that. You know what happens when a kid is learning to walk or learning to speak or learning to do anything? When the little kid who's a toddler does something, everybody goes, yay, yay. So that becomes reward and punishment. So could you imagine that a parasite mind is being born right now by all the injustice and all the opinions and judgment that the parents have against life? So that little programmed mind will continue creating a parasite of its own. A parasite of its own is a living being that is over a living being. And let's say that living being is just meant for love. It's just a beautiful love. But the parasite that fed over another living being, all the opinions that it cannot sing, that it sings horribly, that is never going to do its best, never going to be happy, just going to be, any problem that it will have, it will believe, because it will use that to submit itself. And this is where I'm coming from. The parasite is only alive when we give it power to submit ourselves. And that is the point of machismo. So when we begin being aware that we contribute to this machismo, to suppress divine mother, to suppress our body, to suppress ourselves, our creativity, when we get awareness of that is when our spirit comes out and awakens. First of all is to heal the wounded. Because every racist mind, every discriminant mind, every parasite mind, it only wants to be loved unconditionally without a story. So the day that we're tired, I remember the day I was tired to feed the parasite, I was done. I was done talking the negative language, the negativity, because it didn't prosper. It only grew more painful and more painful to the moment I said, I don't want to feed this anymore. And I tell you, sister, the moment that I begin protecting myself from myself is because I didn't want to feed that parasite mind inside of me, that irritation, that negativity, all that lies that, just take your happiness away. When I begin noticing that I was the parasite, and the parasite was just a mask being built to get validation from the outside, especially in this time of the internet. Many people get so depressed because, they see all these great artists in the internet getting all these likes, all these opinions that becomes an addiction, and they are needed for that validation. So people will begin doing things of awareness in the internet, not because they want to, it's because they're looking for that validation. And then the moment that they get betrayed, they don't listen to something, they're going to use that to hurt themselves, looking for, like my brother said, looking for that bad, quote or that bad, thing that they write into your feed, looking for that because that becomes an addiction. But the moment it is, when you're not looking for that stuff because that exists. People are going to judge you. So when you stop using people to hurt yourself, that's when everything begins to change, because you begin respecting people and you begin respecting yourself, because it comes from the spiritual world that I live in now. In my world, in Jose's little bubble that I make up a story in my head, but I know it's story, but I prefer to live in the story of positivity than negativity. I know that everyone in this planet are angels, are just beautiful angels, and the angels are the messengers in our tradition. So this is when we ask the question in the fifth agreement: what kind of messengers are we? What kind of angels are we? If we like the message that we're giving, we continue. But if we don't like it, we can change it. And here comes the awareness. If it was the parasite mind and all those beliefs that stop us from shining, then we are aware of what we need to work on. We need to protect ourselves from ourselves, like an addict, day by day. No guilt, no shame. And that's what I tell you, one of the most beautiful things for me to admit, it was my parasite mind, because my parasite was the biggest addict in the world. And it was not only substance, it was with everything that I could say, especially with romantic relationship, because that is the big dream of the planet's fall, to hurt yourself, to betray love, to misuse love, because we don't know how to love, we know how to possess. And imagine possessing the parasite. We never want to let it go. And this is when I really know that the island of safety is not only in Teotihuacan. The island of safety is inside our mind, when we're afraid of the unknown, where we just prefer a relationship that is just disrespectful and abusive, and an island of safety and a pain that we're used to. It comes a moment where we stop using that against ourselves, because we know that we're doing that. Before we didn't know. But when we come to know our parasite, it's not up to anybody. I can go to a psychic, I can go to my father, but it will never really transform my life until I accept it. And it's what I did. Now I can just witness my parasite mind just offer me things, because it is alive. But what I learned in this tradition is to control my emotional poison. What is the price I'm going to pay from losing my awareness? Because when I lose my awareness is where I go into the addict habit of judging and guilting myself in that dynamic continues. So getting comfortable in the uncomfortableness is the key for me to see my parasite and to not give it that attention. And that's when my father teach us, remember in the book, Voice of Knowledge, teaching that came out in this, but the voice, the beautiful mind, that movie about a schizophrenic. And then when he said to all of our all these apprentices, all of us, he said, I see you guys like that guy. You hear voices, you don't see people, but you hear those voices, and it's your parasite voice. The moment that you stop giving it attention, you're going to be free from yourself, and that's personal freedom for me.
And the fifth agreement, like, when I think about the foundations of shamanism, which is around deeply connecting to the nature of ourselves and the nature around us, that fifth agreement, be skeptical, but learn to listen, is really such a deep foundation of, I believe, shamanic practice, because we have to simply show up and keep our awareness right here. So we're not believing anything, but we're also believing everything. So can you share about that? And we'll weave it then into doing shamanic ritual as a way to learn to navigate in a new manner.
Yes, it's a beautiful imagination. I always like to use imagination because that's how I do witch questing. I just like to imagine that you wake up in a world full of stories, and none of the stories are real. They're just stories of humanity, mankind. How can 5,000 years of stories be real? So when I walk in life, I see all these storytellers walking, all these people who believe in different stories, that my story, doesn't really matter. I put it aside because I'm visiting. I begin listening how people dream. I can talk about awareness and the parasite mind to people who believe about aliens, people who believe about ghosts. And really they just join that world, and I can speak to them like if I was speaking to somebody who was a lawyer or someone who is a judge. It's because we all have different ways of seeing life. We all have ways of seeing the dream, and we all have our own individual dream. So when we don't try to conquer or impose the way that we dream, it's just about witnessing. And the fifth agreement is the best tool for me, because I don't believe myself, I don't believe them, and I don't believe anything else. And that's my father's one of the main teachings that he teaches us. Don't believe anything, don't believe yourself, and especially don't believe them. Their opinions, they don't matter. They're creating stories. The judgmental stories can hurt you. Your judgmental stories can hurt yourself too. And the dream can hurt you too. Like right now, we can say, I wish humanity will make it. Like they asked my father a long time ago, I wish humanity will make it. And he responded, it's making it. And right now we can say, oh, how can you say that when all these rights are happening here, when this injustice is happening here, when racism is growing? And he responded, imagine waking up 1,000 years in the time of the Inquisition in England, so you can understand the language, knowing what you know now. How long would it take for you to tell everybody, while you're studying how to hunt witches, how to make deal with the devil, all those books that you're reading, they're nonsense. They're not real, because there's awareness now. You don't believe in those stories, but they do. So how long would it take them to, accuse you of witchcraft, deal with the devil, and put you to the gallows pole? We are growing as a humanity. But the beautiful thing is to not believe all the old wounds. The scorpion that's stinging somebody's own stinger, to not hurt us with the old judgment, because sometimes we already healed an old wound, but we reopen it. And you can see right now, the injustice is so big in the world that people are reopening wounds because that's where they feel comfortable, because they are uncomfortable in the unknown. People who get educated with racism and discrimination, they want to make their parents proud, the bigger racists, and they don't even realize what they're doing. They're just trapped in a nightmare. So when we begin talking to somebody who just has an epiphany of this life and doesn't want it anymore, is to, know that we didn't know what we're doing. So don't be hard on yourself with the judgments. You didn't know. You were stuck in a story, and no thoughts that you believe in about yourself, they're not even real. So could you imagine how powerful we could be, how heart can open up when we know that those self-judgment that we tell ourselves is not real? Then we begin to heal. So if we heal ourselves, we can see how we stop ourselves. And then when the person who judged himself, imagine being racist and doesn't want to be a racist anymore, and he begins seeing what all the people did, he didn't do it. He was born into a world that he was dreaming that way. He just woke up from a nightmare. And I tell you, all of us are waking up from a certain kind of nightmare like that. I woke up in a dream of junkie. Why do we do junkie? When they put us all this poison and we don't even have a chance. But the love for ourselves does. And this is when we don't believe the outside dream, that you're a junkie, you can never grow, or you believe yourself, oh, I'm a junkie, can never grow, or you believe them, junkies will never grow. No, we see how we were destroying our life, and we want to change that we begin being skeptical of the negativity that we cannot change, that we will always be a junkie. No, we had enough of that world till we wake up. So a racist one day can wake up. He's done of that world. Someone who lives in an abusive relationship where they're getting physically hit by their husbands or their wife, doesn't matter. They're getting abused. They wake up and say, I don't want that in my life anymore, especially when they see the little children walking and seeing that, because that's their destiny. When you notice that that's the destiny for children in the future, we change our own and deal with ourselves, because if we don't deal with ourselves, how can we let this parasite beast come to the little minds? And, one beautiful teaching about Bruce Lee was he didn't want to pass this negativity to his children. So he broke all the corruption from his kung fu training, but he also dealt with the parasite in his life because he didn't want to pass his parasite to the children. And it's like my father did with all of us, because when I said all of us, I don't just say his children, I mean all his apprentices, because he didn't want to pass his parasite to anybody else. And when we wake up, not believing our own lies, I don't want to pass my parasite to the next generation, because, I see a junkie who's 12 years old and I can tell him, you can change your life. You don't have to believe the outside dream to suppress you. Why? Because I've done it before and it can be done. And that's why it's so important for everybody to speak their truth, to come out of their darkness so they can heal themselves. Because when we begin healing ourselves, we find our own light. And that's when the ceremony becomes so powerful, because we're not doing it for validation, for people to see us. We're one with God. We're one with nature. We're one Mother Earth. We feel it inside of us. So everything we do is an act of power, especially not believing the temptation that irritate us, the temptation that make us lose with envy and hatred and jealousy. We're fine just the way we are. We are alive. What else do we need? The parasite mind will offer you many things, but be skeptical about that. You have everything now.
And as we learn to be skeptical of our minds and what our mind is saying, there's also beautiful ways that we can take action to bring ritual and ceremony to help us also transform. So can you share about your love of teaching people practical ways to claim their own attention? It's really what I love about ceremony and rituals. It's nonverbal, it's art. And you have such a profound way of sharing that. So to please share that gift you have of how to use ritual to come back into your true nature.
One of the simplest that works for me was something that my grandmother taught me. When I'm feeling stuck or in a moment, is to breathe. I breathe. I take a breath in. I let the breath out. 101 spirituality, simple. But why do I say this? The most simplest acts of ceremony can help you in the everyday life. Let's say I attach to something. I attach to a relationship. I attach to an idea of work that's not working for me, that's just bringing me irritation, but I don't let the breath go. So what's happening? I'm suffocating. And that's one exercise of ceremony that I do all the time. There's always a rhythm for the harmonium to be played. You put air in it, you let out. You never stop feeding the body the air of Mother Nature, because that's when we become anxious. That's when we begin losing ourselves. So once you are connected to the body, that's the first step. Not the mind, not the problems, because they come and go. It's first you're connected to the breath of air. Okay, now we're connected. We're not stuck into any thought. Now I like to do this other ceremony after following this one. I get the two hands and I place them together. I don't touch. I begin feeling the energy between the two palms of my hands. Then I begin moving. I begin moving them. Like I find a resistance. I call it like an energetic rubber band. The moment that you begin moving it up and down, like an accordion, you begin feeling the energy all around your hands, and in your being begins connecting your body. This technique I learned from grandmother, and I practiced it when I lost my eyesight because I couldn't see, but I learned how to feel. And the moment that I begin feeling this body, the space between my hands is what I really am. It's not the body, because this space, what I feel, the energy coming is what I really am. So when I begin focus this on that ceremony and I walk up in nature in life, I begin putting my hands out like this and I close my eyes. And in this ceremony, I can connect to any tree, any air, any place of nature because I'm one of them. I remove my head, my mind, and I begin witnessing it as it feeds me information like a tree. But at the same time, I don't lose focus on this activity. Knowing that I am this energy, I place my hands down and I begin look everywhere around. And I know that I'm still meditating. I'm still in the place of breathing, but now I'm using my breath as I breathe and think, and I have my hands still open. Now I begin doing the power of prayer. Now I'm sending this energy that I just collected from myself and I'm putting it out because I feel that we're all connected. So if you need a little energy from me, I can put a little energy from me. If I need a little energy from you, I can take some energy because we all are doing this thing. So when we are in a beautiful communion with Mother Nature and you want your shatter to end, you can just do this exercise and go out to nature and just see how you become being like something that comes in your body that nothing sticks. You can hold a thought and it will slip out because right now you are in the process of the deep nature. And now what I love to do about this is have a beautiful day, walk around, and really put attention who you meet. Put attention who you interact with. It might feel like you're interacting to some person, but sometimes when you begin living this way, you start talking to divine masters. And when I talk divine masters, everyone's a divine master, but I'm talking about some information that's being pulled to you, like saying to you, like a message that's gonna come to you in this day because you're open to life. So when you begin opening to life, your whole life is a ceremony, because everything you do is an act of love. So when you place yourself in this moment, you begin witnessing everything around. And I tell you, I started this training a few years ago, and it hasn't ended. That's why when I have to put my hands, I love to put my hands like this. I begin putting energy towards the people that I love, and they don't even have to know. I'm just sending the prayer. And this is what I'm coming from. A prayer doesn't need to be validated. Love doesn't need to be validated. Ceremonies don't need to be validated. Ceremony is just an act of love for the earth to be your witness and make a deal with her. And you can make a deal with her when you're in this moment, tranquility. But when I make a deal with her, with life, when I was feeling all of this and I can see my suffering mind, the parasite, when they want to go away, is when I was drowning. And I made a deal with Mother Earth. And if she let me go, I gave my word that I will do everything just to share these gems out of me wherever I go. And every time I try to break that word, chaos began happening. So Mother Nature now put me back in my place because it was a reflection of my consciousness. When you begin living with a life of ceremony, your consciousness is completely open because you will know how you're going against yourself or life. And that's so uncomfortable because you know what you're doing. We were once a fallen angel because we didn't know what we did, but now with the awareness we do. And that's a ceremonial act to keep yourself awakened at all times. You think Archangel Michael ever puts his sword down when he's stepping on the devil? No. He's always stepping on the devil, and it always has his sword up because the sword is his word. And it's the power of his word that he puts faith in. And the little devil is nothing separate, it's itself too. So this is what we're doing when we're doing this act of power. We're remembering what we truly are, energy. Get into the matter of the body. That is a living being because it's Mother Earth. Now we're that little angel protecting Divine Mother in this physical body from ourselves. The moment that we begin finding it our own way, and this is very important, everybody. When you do a ceremony, do it your own way, not anybody else's way. Why? Because you have your own personal way of healing. Like my healing, is my personal healing. It doesn't have to do with anybody else. It's nobody's business how I heal myself because I understand it. And I don't need no validation to tell everybody how I heal myself, because that's my medicine. You have your medicine. You have your healing medicine. And this is what ceremony is very important, because a ceremony act, there's no lies welcome. It's only your truth to support the love of your life, to make yourself rise in love, in the name of love, not use love as a tool to hurt yourself with and corrupt love. Once you learn to uncorrupt yourself, you begin walking in this earth. And yes, there's people trying to manipulate you, people to try to put a fast one on you. Remember, they're just children. Will you take children personal? And I tell you, from this point of view, a divine mother, everybody's a children. And that's one thing that I'm so grateful, because right now we're in the time of Mama Gaia's leaving this planet a few years ago. So her teachings are very important to me, because she introduced shamanism and Hinduism and the angels to me. And they all have something in common, that is to support Divine Mother. And they all have different rituals. So whatever works for you, whatever ceremony works for you, it will not have life unless you do it with your sacred heart. And your sacred heart is a medicine bag that you put all the tools that you hold sacred, because you respect them, because you have faith in them. Like I have faith in my father's words, in his medicine. And it has always healed me, because I respect him so much. And then all of a sudden, his face turned into my face. So I respect myself that much as well. So you hear what I'm saying? When you begin respecting your teachers, is when you begin respecting yourself. And you're not afraid of any negativity in the world, because you're not afraid of yourself. And this is when the ceremony is applied, when you bring divinity into darkness.
Thank you, Jose. Such beautiful words. And for all of us to really settle into this place that your heart is the medicine bag. I think it's really easy to get caught up sometimes, and there's something out there that I have to do, or some tools that I have to have. I have to have the right tools. And the truth is, the tools are beautiful, whatever the physical tools are. But really, where the healing and where the real tool is right inside of us, always. So as we close, Jose, is there any last things that you would like to share with the listeners, with people that are part of the ceremony that we're in right now?
Well, I have so much gratitude for the energy of the Toltec mother. And one of the Toltec mothers that came and left this world was Grandmother Sarita, my grandmother. And she said, I'm so happy for you guys in the generation that is around you, because you will feel the return of the Divine Mother. Her consciousness is going to come, and you're going to witness. And I feel it, I feel it in me, and I feel it in you, sister, because you're representing, so beautifully. I'm so proud and honored to see the dance and the fire you're sharing around the world, because you have this energy. And I love to everybody to have this energy as well, because this is the return of the Divine Mother. And even if you're male, you have Divine Mother body in you, because it is just humanity who separate us, male and female, because we're all alive. And the moment that you notice yourself alive, this body is lent to us, and how you treat yourself is how you're treating the planet. If you suppress yourself, you're suppressing the power of Divine Mother and the femininity that exists in this world. So it's time to end machismo by making your life a masterpiece of art and having a heart. You don't have to have coldness. You don't have to have a pretend cold mask or a heavy heart, a cold heart or a fake mask. Just be your authentic self. And I tell you, the people who are not supposed to be in your life will walk away, and your parasites, outside parasites, will remove themselves, and your parasite will not use them to hurt yourself. And it will find people who are supporting of your art, because you're supporting their art, and you will find your own tribe. But you have to let go of the old characters, especially yourself, that mentality that's affecting you. When you get consciousness, you have the awareness that you're here to do everything in service to take care of the love of your life. And just listen to this. It's not selfish, because when you give to yourself this beautiful thing, you can give it to your children. Once you give it to your children will have something. And this is when the teachers becomes eternal. And we have to detach, like grandmother detached from her old ways. But if she didn't detach from her old ways, and she was very strict with my father that she has to follow her ways or go the highway, no. She respect my father so much. Like my father respect us so much. And we will do the same thing because it's all about the heart. And I tell you, when you look into the mirror, the most loyal person, the ally, is looking at you, ready to serve you whatever you command it is. But I ask you this question: are you ready to serve the love of your life and stop listening to the parasite, to the injustice, and return to love before you forget yourself? Because one day we're going to forget ourselves. We're going to forget even our mind of what we are. So let's wake up and live in golden time. What do I mean by golden time? To appreciate your loved ones. If you have, turmoil or debate with them, or you have problems and you don't speak, don't wait for a hospital to speak with that person. Make peace with them. The stories don't matter, just stories. Don't let stories separate from the people you love, and especially yourself. And just enjoy this beautiful dream, because life is a vacation. And if you lose your suitcase, just know that you can get another one, because the suitcase is not on vacation. You are the soul traveler.
Thank you so much, Jose. And I'm so grateful to have you share your heart and your wisdom with everyone. Thanks you also, everyone, for being part of this beautiful ceremony with the Shift Network. Blessings.
Thank you for joining us for the Shamanism Summit, brought to you by the Shift Network. To learn more about our programs and events, visit theshiftnetwork.com. Thank you again for gathering with us and for sharing this empowering path with your friends and family.